you're against a human player, and the Mountain King throws a bolt at one of your bears. The next move is almost all of his breakers focus that bear and kill it. Then he moves away from you. And then as soon as he's got that up again, he's going to turn back and try and fight you again. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to lure you into an out-of-position fight where your units line up incorrectly. This plays out a little bit differently whenever you go in against an undead player, because positioning is really an interesting term because of the different concepts of what you can do with your Dryads that I just spoke to you about a few minutes ago. What happens in this matchup in terms of how DPS happens in waves is you've got your Breath of Fire, it will go off, and you've got at least 3 to 4 units to take heavy damage. And then you've also got a Shadow Strike, or you've got a Fan of Knives. And the result is, the undead player looks and he goes, oh my god, I have 2 Fiends now at half health, and I've got 3 Wagons at almost 0 health. If I run my Wagons away, I lose all my DPS and I can't kill his Dryads, and I'm going to lose everything, right? If I keep my Wagons attacking units, he's now going to kill off all my Wagons. If I teleport now, he's still going to kill my Wagons while I'm teleporting. If I heal this one Fiend, well, I'm still going to lose the other Fiend, and oh my god, what do I do about all these other different scenarios? So what you want to do as an elf player is you really want to focus, if you're going Warden and Panda, on your hero abilities as the key to your DPS, right? The number one thing you need to focus on while you're doing this actual fight is not losing them, because the undead player is going to try and focus them. And in this game, we saw Hot use a lot of different items to ensure that his heroes weren't going to get taken down. Whenever he felt like the fight was going to happen pretty soon, he put an invisibility potion on his Panda just to give it a little bit more utility going into the fight, and to guarantee 1 extra Breath of Fire that would be able to go off. And I mean, that's the thing. You've got all these items at your disposal, and especially if you've used map control, if you've abused Warden early game to gain map control, then if you've used Dryads to gain map control, I mean, you've got an Expo. And if you've got this Expo, take advantage of it. Pick up these extra items and make it where you go into the fight and you can't do anything to your heroes. If you can't do crap to your heroes, you throw down a Breath of Fire and then you focus fire stuff, it'll work out great for you. If you go back and look at this replay, the Death Knight is tanking literally 3 bears. Generally speaking, focusing damage on the Death Knight isn't going to do crap for you. This isn't the right move, but it's okay. I mean, the elf player could practically attack move at that army with his bears, run his Dryads around and control his heroes, and be okay in the fight. Now, one other thing that I want you to consider whenever you're going into your fights is that if you're going to go for the Focus Fiends technique, or really depending on what technique you're using, you can use rally points while you're in the fight. I mentioned earlier that there was a game where I did pretty well, where I focused on some players' Fiends, and then I switched over to his, I switched onto his Meat Wagons. Whenever I did the switch to his Meat Wagons, I told my archers to run down near the Meat Wagons, and then I went shift, right click, right click, right click on each one of the Meat Wagons. My next move then was to focus on my bears, my Demon Hunter. This was a different replay, but it still works, or it was a different game setup, but it still works out here. I focused on my Demon Hunter and my Panda, and the result was, whenever the undead player went for a focus kill on my Demon Hunter, I was able to staff him out with the bear, and then, believe it or not, I F1, went to my Demon Hunter, right-clicked, shift right-clicked 2 other wells, and right-clicked my Panda's picture, and I went back to my Panda, right? So my Demon Hunter's now going to come back into the fight, his Meat Wagons are being focused down, and I've still got more control of my bears and Panda than he probably does of any individual part of his army, simply because he's trying to do all these things at once with individual clicks instead of doing these rallies. And like I said, I'm going to be giving you an FPVOD link in this so that you can take a look at what I'm talking about. Rallying through different units and fights, or at least knowing when to do it, can really, really make things a lot easier for you, and it can increase your effectiveness a lot. Anyways, that's really most of the stuff I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. You're looking at, whenever you're going in against Undead, the most important utility you have for you is scouting. One other thing to look at that I didn't mention during the replay, but let's say Hot had never run through X-Lord's base when he did to see the Sacrificial Pit. At that time, he could have taken a look, like if they'd fought in the middle of the map instead. If Hot had clicked on one of the Fiends that belongs to X-Lord, he would have seen that this Fiend had a 1-0 upgrade at that point in the game. And the thing is, you've got to think to yourself, this is mid-game, right? Or late to mid-game, already going into Tier 3. If an Undead player is getting upgrades on Fiends, but doesn't have that many Fiends, he's clearly getting these upgrades to go on air units. And at that point in the game, this is going to be Destroyers, or it's going to be Worms. So even if Hot had not managed to scout his base as completely as he did, he still could have made this critical decision. He could have said, 1-0 upgrades, that doesn't quite make sense if he's going to be focusing on melee units, I think he's probably going to be getting some air units, right? You've got to make these decisions. And, I mean, think about it. Professional players go into fight, and they have 300 to 350 APM, right? Outside of those matches, a lot of that has to do with how they're either running through different building action groups to double check to make sure they're doing everything that they want to be, and it also has to do with quickly adjusting their action groups as they're doing a lot of different tasks at once. And I mean, one example of like a mid-game, a lot of things at once, you had Hot was creeping down at the bottom left Merc camp. He was also creeping his little Ancient of War. He had his Ancient of War creeping over near the middle of the map. He was harassing with his Warden. He was doing a lot of different stuff, which explains why his APM would be high. But, I mean, what about when they go into a fight and they're doing 350 APM or so? I mean, this is 5 to 6 clicks or button presses per second. They're not spamming through their building waypoints while they do this, right? Part of what's happening here is they're checking on what the other player has. They're going, mana burn. How much mana does he have left? Oh, my mana burn's up again. Does he have enough mana for it to be worthwhile? They're making important choices before they make actions. And if you're not clicking through your opponent's units and thinking and looking at what's happening, you're not doing as much as these players are. And I'm not saying you need to be on Hot's level to kick somebody's butt on on BattleNet. But I am saying that if you try and pick up some of these different techniques and some of these scouting things, and also just thinking about what they're doing, it's going to start to pay off for you, especially in the Elf versus Undead matchup. There really are a lot of things that I could still talk about in this matchup and this replay in particular. So if you have any questions or anything that you'd like for me to talk about, send me a message, post, do something, get my attention, and I'll do my best to get a response back to you. But the big thing that I want you to think about whenever you're going into your own games and whenever you're watching replays in the future is to just look. These players are making really big decisions non-stop, right? They're saying, I have map control now, I can go tier 3. I have map control again, I can set up my expo now. Even though I might lose some units in this fight, I can protect my expo as it's going up, and I can also break 50 to make sure that I'm getting enough units to guarantee that I hold this expo, and also to force the Undead player more and more into a corner. And doing these judgments works out, right? So anyways, for super epic players, critical decisions. Middle ground players, look at micro and try and identify how it works in waves. Watch for it. It's almost always there. Hero abilities go off, focus down units. There's a lull. There's a drop in time, and during that drop and in that blank time, if you can learn how to micro and move your units away and reposition and force them out of position in that little bit of time, you're going to see your gameplay improve, and you're going to start to see how you go into fights and be like, wow, I just kicked this guy's ass. He's got nothing left. It's because you're out microing him completely because you have a better vision of what's going on in the fight and more experience in it. And then for our cute little newbies, start looking towards rallying and waypointing a little bit more. If you waypoint through certain actions, that's how you can do more. If you waypoint a creep camp, maybe you can send a wisp into the Undead's base and go, he's got another crypt going up. I bet he's going to guard me. And then plan accordingly. Anyways, WC Replays, this is Aydin. You stay classy.